Hi everyone, this video is especially for those who are preparing for NEET PG 2021 because this will help you to quickly recapitulate the steps to be followed to interpret blood gas analysis reports. And because the latest INI set July 2021 session had a question with choices related to venous blood gas values, I've intentionally chosen a venous blood gas analysis report to meet two objectives. The first objective is to tell you that venous blood gas analysis report values are sufficient enough to identify an acid-base disorder. Only when you're trying to assess oxygenation status of a person, you would need an arterial blood gas analysis report, not otherwise. And the second objective is to tell you that venous blood gas analysis report values and spot urine values are sufficient enough for us to identify cause of an acid-base disorder, even mixed acid-base disorders, without a backup of clinical history. So let's start discussing about the report that is provided here. And we know, irrespective of the values that are provided in the report, the first step to interpret blood gas analysis reports would be to identify the primary acid-base disorder. And to identify the primary acid-base disorder, the first parameter that we should look at is pH. And we know that the normal pH is 7.36 to 7.44. Now, what if the pH is less than 7.36? I would call it as acidosis. And if it's more than 7.44, it will be called as alkalosis. Now, in both acidosis and alkalosis, the next step is to identify whether it's a metabolic condition or a respiratory condition, for which I should look at PCO2 and bicarbonate. Now, if there is an acidotic pH that is accompanied by an increase in PCO2, that is called as respiratory acidosis, because in this condition, for some reason, the respiratory system has failed and carbon dioxide has accumulated, and we know carbon dioxide is a source of acid that has caused the pH to drop. So that's called as respiratory acidosis. And if an acidotic pH is accompanied by a decrease in bicarbonate, that's called as metabolic acidosis, because this means the buffer is missing. Buffer which is supposed to buffer acids is missing, so acids would accumulate causing acidotic pH, so that is metabolic acidosis. Now on the other side, we have alkalotic pH. If alkalotic pH is accompanied by a decrease in PCO2, that's called as respiratory alkalosis, because this means in this condition the person is hyperventilated, the person has washed away carbon dioxide, the person has washed away a source of acid causing alkalotic pH, so it is respiratory alkalosis. And if alkalotic pH is accompanied by increase in bicarbonate, that's called as metabolic alkalosis, because this means there is an increase in the buffer. So all acids are buffered, causing an alkalotic pH. So this is how we identify the primary acid-base disorder. Now what is the next step? After you identify the primary acid-base disorder, to identify hidden acid-base disorders, we should calculate compensation. Now, what do you mean by compensation? Whenever there is a drop or an increase in pH, your body will try to bring the pH back to normal. And depending upon which system is defective primarily, the other system would come for the rescue. If the primary defect is of the respiratory system, metabolic, that is kidney, will come for the compensation. If the primary defect is kidney, then respiratory system would come for compensation. Now, what will be the direction of compensation? Is always parallel. If the primary defect is a decrease in PCO2, compensation will be a decrease in bicarbonate. If the primary defect is an increase in PCO2, compensation will be an increase in bicarbonate, and vice versa. Okay. So for example, if it's respiratory acidosis wherein there is a drop in pH caused by an increase in PCO2, kidney will increase the bicarbonate. And what is achieved by this? This bicarbonate will buffer acids produced from carbon dioxide, bringing the pH to normal. That's the compensation in respiratory acidosis. What happens in metabolic acidosis? The primary defect is a decrease in bicarbonate. So the compensation will be a decrease in PCO2. Now, how do you decrease PCO2? If there is acidosis, acid, that is hydrogen ions, increase in CSF, that stimulates respiratory center. The person washes away carbon dioxide, decreasing carbon dioxide, decreasing a source of acid. So the pH is brought back to normal. So what happens in respiratory alkalosis? The primary defect is a decrease in PCO2, compensation will be a decrease in bicarbonate. In metabolic alkalosis, primary defect is an increase in bicarbonate, so the compensation will be an increase in PCO2. So this is the basis of compensation. Does this mean only when the pH is abnormal there is an acid-base disorder? No. Even when there is a normal pH of 7.36 to 7.44, there is a possibility of mixed acid-base disorders which bring the pH back to normal. So normal pH does not exclude acid-base disorders. So even after you check an ABG or a venous blood gas analysis report and you find a normal pH, you will have to look at bicarbonate and PCO2. Only when all these three values are normal, you can declare that this person is in normal acid-base homeostasis. Even when one of those three values are abnormal, you will have to hunt for a reason. Okay. And in this condition, identifying the exact reason for acid-base disorder can be cumbersome, can be confusing. I'll give you an example. Suppose there is a person with normal pH between 7.36 and 7.44, but you find that the bicarbonate is low and PCO2 is also low. Now, when do you think you'll observe or you'll find this observation? What are the scenarios where you can find this observation? Low bicarbonate can be because of metabolic acidosis, and in metabolic acidosis the compensation would be a decrease in PCO2. So this is observed in metabolic acidosis accompanied by a compensatory respiratory hyperventilation. This is one scenario. There is another scenario where you are going to find a similar finding, right? Wherein low PCO2 is caused by respiratory alkalosis and compensation is a decrease in bicarbonate. So you won't know what is the defect. You know where the defect is, so you won't be able to treat it. In that case, in conditions of normal pH, when you're not able to identify the primary acid-base disorder, you will have to look at base excess, which is always provided in blood gas analysis reports. So there are two values, one is base excess, the other one is base excess ECF. I'll first tell you what is base excess. I'll first tell you the normal value for base excess. It is -2 to +2 millimoles per liter or milliequivalents per liter. Now what does it mean? I'll define base excess as the amount of strong acid that needs to be added to 1 liter of the given blood sample at partial pressure of carbon dioxide of 40 millimeter of mercury. This is very important. At a partial pressure of carbon dioxide of 40 millimeter of mercury to bring the pH to normal 7.4. Now, what does it mean when I say the base excess is more? I mean to say I have to add more acid to bring the pH to 7.4, which means there is more base. So, if I say base excess is more than +2, it means there is more base in the system. And what will you call the condition as when the base is more? You will call it as alkalosis. And what alkalosis is it going to be? It's going to be metabolic alkalosis, to be precise. What gives me the confidence to say that it's metabolic alkalosis? Because I have equilibrated the blood sample to a PCO2 of 40 millimeter of mercury, which means even if there had been a respiratory defect in the person, I have corrected it by equilibrating it to PCO2 of 40. Even after that, the base is excess. So that base excess is only because of metabolic defect. So I would say it's called as metabolic alkalosis. Now, what if the base excess is less than -2? If it's less than -2, it means I didn't have to add acid. I had to add more base to bring the pH to 7.4. When do I have to add more base? When there is more acid. So, if the base excess is less than -2, it means the person has got more acid and it is metabolic acidosis because I've corrected for the respiratory defect by bringing the PCO2 to 40. So, this is base excess. Now, what is base excess ECF? Yeah, because we know that in our system, not just the blood, even the interstitial fluid will try to buffer when there is an acid or a base that is produced. So, if you just calculate base excess in blood, it means you are not including the contribution of the interstitial fluid. So, what do we do to find out the base excess ECF, including blood and interstitial fluid? It's a calculated value wherein we calculate what is the amount of strong acid that needs to be added to 1 liter of the given blood, assuming that the hemoglobin concentration is just 5 grams per deciliter. If it's just blood, the hemoglobin concentration will be 15 grams per deciliter. Once you add ECF and dilute it, the hemoglobin concentration will be just 5 grams per deciliter. So we calculate it and we say if the hemoglobin concentration has been just 5 grams per deciliter, this is the base excess. And that's the appropriate value that you should look at in a blood gas analysis report to interpret it. So summary is, if base excess is more than +2, it is metabolic alkalosis. If it's less than -2, it is metabolic acidosis. Let's look at the venous blood gas analysis report. We'll try to interpret it now. So first step is, as always, to identify the primary acid-base disorder, for which I'm going to look at the pH value. Normal is between 7.36 and 7.44. Here it's normal. I am not going to declare it as normal acid-base homeostasis before I check PCO2 and bicarbonate. And we know normal PCO2 is between 36 and 44 millimeter of mercury. In this case, it is low. Yeah, low PCO2. Then I'm checking bicarbonate. Normal is 21 to 27 millimoles per liter. In this case, it's low. So exactly like the scenario which I told you previously, normal pH, low PCO2, low bicarbonate can be observed in two scenarios. I'm not going to confuse here. So I'm going to straight away look at base excess ECF. If I look at base excess ECF, here it's minus 9.9 millimoles per liter. So there is excess acid. It's metabolic acidosis. So finally I'm done with step number 1. I've identified that's a case of metabolic acidosis. Now what is step number 2? Always to identify compensation. Okay, how do I calculate compensation? So this defect is a drop in pH, which is not observed here, but there must have been a drop in pH caused by a decrease in bicarbonate. So the compensation would be a decrease in PCO2. I have to find out what is the expected PCO2. Expected PCO2 in metabolic acidosis, I've told you this formula so many times in my series. So expected PCO2 is equal to 1.5 into bicarbonate plus 8. And what is the bicarbonate value that is provided here? Always look at the actual bicarbonate value. It is 7.5 plus 8. And this is going to be somewhere like 24 plus 8. 32. On either side you can have a range. You always cannot say only one value, right? You always should have a range. So it is 32 plus or minus 2. So expected PCO2 is anywhere between 30 and 34, which means in this condition, from a normal value of 40 millimeter of mercury, I would expect the PCO2 to drop to anywhere between 30 and 34. But in this case, PCO2 is much less than that. Does this mean your body has overcompensated? As I've told you in the 4th video of this series, overcompensation is never possible. Yeah, your body never overcompensates. So if you find an overcompensated state, it means there is a hidden acid-base disorder. And which hidden acid-base disorder do you think will cause a further drop in PCO2? That is respiratory alkalosis. So I know that this is a condition of metabolic acidosis plus respiratory alkalosis. Okay, that is why the pH is maintained in the normal range. Okay, now this is also confirmed. This diagnosis of metabolic acidosis with respiratory alkalosis is also confirmed by the bicarbonate value, by actual bicarbonate value and standard bicarbonate value. This I've told you so many times in my previous videos. What is standard bicarbonate? I said standard bicarbonate is a predicted bicarbonate value when the blood sample is equilibrated with normal PCO2 and normal PO2. Or in other words, if the respiratory system of the person is working properly, what would be the expected bicarbonate? So when the respiratory system is working properly, the bicarbonate should have been 20, but so long it was low. So some respiratory condition has caused a drop in bicarbonate. Which respiratory condition will cause a drop in bicarbonate? A drop in PCO2. Which condition causes a drop in PCO2? It is respiratory alkalosis. So this difference between actual bicarbonate and standard bicarbonate tells you that there is respiratory alkalosis. And even after I equilibrate it to normal PCO2 and normal partial pressure of oxygen, the bicarbonate has not returned back to normal. Yeah, what is normal value? 21 to 27. It has not still returned back to normal. So there is a metabolic condition which also causes a drop in bicarbonate. Which metabolic condition would cause a drop in bicarbonate? It is metabolic acidosis. So there are two ways in which you can identify mixed acid-base disorders when there is normal pH. When there is normal pH, easier ways to look at base excess ECF. If base excess ECF is more than +2, it's metabolic alkalosis. If it's less than -2, it is metabolic acidosis. Another way is you can look at actual bicarbonate and standard bicarbonate. If standard bicarbonate and actual bicarbonate are different, it means there is a respiratory defect. And depending upon in which direction the difference is, you will know what respiratory defect it is. Okay. Now, because it's a condition of metabolic acidosis, I've told you whenever you make a diagnosis of metabolic acidosis, the next step is to look at anion gap. And I've told you the definition for anion gap is the difference between unmeasured anion and unmeasured cation. And it's calculated as sodium minus within brackets chloride and bicarbonate. And what are we going to use this anion gap for? To identify the cause of metabolic acidosis. Now, what are the two probable causes of metabolic acidosis or a drop in bicarbonate? It can be either because of production of an abnormal acid like HA, or it can be because of loss of bicarbonate. And through what route do you think bicarbonate can be lost? It can be lost either through GIT or through kidney. Example for GI loss of bicarbonate is diarrhea. Example for renal loss of bicarbonate is renal tubular acidosis. Now, what happens when the metabolic acidosis is caused by production of an abnormal acid? In that case, the abnormal acid we know would react with bicarbonate to form H2CO3 and A-. So, this A- is an unmeasured anion, concentration of which increases. When unmeasured anion concentration increases, anion gap will be elevated. So, in a case, if you find anion gap to be elevated, it means it's a metabolic acidosis caused by production of an abnormal acid. Okay, so you have to look for causes of abnormal acid production. It can be lactic acidosis, it can be ketoacidosis, or it can be a metabolite of any alcohol. That is about increased anion gap metabolic acidosis. Now, what if it's because of loss of bicarbonate either through GIT or through kidney? Irrespective of the route of loss of bicarbonate, in all these conditions, your body would reclaim chloride. So, chloride concentration increases. So, all these would be hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis. So, what happens in hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis to anion gap? So, in metabolic acidosis caused by hyperchloremic conditions, the drop in bicarbonate is compensated by an increase in chloride. So, both get cancelled, so it's going to be normal. So, the summary is you find out anion gap to find out the cause of metabolic acidosis. If it's increased anion gap metabolic acidosis, it means it's caused by production of an abnormal acid. Example, lactic acidosis, ketoacidosis, or an alcohol poisoning. Whereas if anion gap is normal, then it's because of loss of bicarbonate either through GIT or through kidney. GI loss of bicarbonate example would be diarrhea. Renal loss of bicarbonate example would be renal tubular acidosis. Now let's see what has happened in this case. So we know anion gap is calculated as sodium minus within brackets chloride and bicarbonate. Sodium in this condition is 138 minus chloride here is 109 plus bicarbonate. Always use actual bicarbonate for calculation. So it is 17.5. So it's 138 minus 126.5, which is 11.5. We know until the anion gap is still 12, it's normal. So it's a case of normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. So far what have I identified? I've identified that it's a case of metabolic acidosis with respiratory alkalosis. And the metabolic acidosis happens to be a normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. With this, can I exclude any of these choices? Yeah, can I exclude any of these choices? I can exclude D because we know lactic acidosis presents as increased anion gap metabolic acidosis. And because it's normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, we know it can be A or B or C. Now, in all cases of normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, the next step would be to find out whether it's a GI loss or renal loss. And for that, I should calculate urinary anion gap. Before I tell you what is urinary anion gap and how do we interpret it, I'll give you a short clue to use urinary anion gap. Urinary anion gap is negative. Yeah, it is negative in GI loss of bicarbonate, gut GI. Yeah, if it's negative, urinary anion gap is negative, it is gastrointestinal loss of bicarbonate or it is diarrhea. If urinary anion gap is positive, it is renal loss of bicarbonate, which is renal tubular acidosis. Now, what is the basis of urinary anion gap? It is based on the fact that in any physiological solution, sum of cation should be equal to sum of anion. And what are the cations of urine? Urine has sodium and potassium. And other than sodium and potassium, I am going to consider the remaining cations as unmeasured cations. Will be equal to, what are the anions of urine? Chloride. In blood, in plasma anion gap, we include bicarbonate. In urinary anion gap, you are not supposed to include bicarbonate, though it's an anion, because we reclaim all bicarbonate which gets filtered into the glomerulus in the PCT. So bicarbonate concentration of urine normally is supposed to be 0. That is why I'm not going to include bicarbonate here. So chloride, and the remaining anions will be called as unmeasured anion. And we know anion gap is the difference between unmeasured anion and unmeasured cation. So I'm going to bring this to this side. So unmeasured anion minus unmeasured cation will be equal to sodium plus potassium minus chloride. Do you understand this? So urinary anion gap is equal to sodium plus potassium minus chloride. Now what happens if it's a GI loss of bicarbonate? If it is gastrointestinal loss of bicarbonate, there is metabolic acidosis, and because of this metabolic acidosis, H+, more and more H+ will get secreted into the distal convoluted tubule. And all those H+ ions will react with ammonia, forming ammonium. And this ammonium will be excreted in urine as ammonium chloride. So in GI loss of bicarbonate, urinary chloride concentration will be very high. So if chloride concentration here is high, it happens to be more than sodium and potassium put together. So this is going to be negative. That is why I said in GI loss of bicarbonate, urinary anion gap will be negative. What if it's renal loss of bicarbonate? If it's renal loss of bicarbonate, whenever sodium tries to get reabsorbed along the renal tubules, usually sodium is accompanied by bicarbonate. But if it's renal loss of bicarbonate, bicarbonate cannot accompany sodium. So what accompanies sodium? Chloride. So if it's renal loss of bicarbonate, what we do is we reclaim sodium along with chloride. So urinary chloride concentration is very low in renal tubular acidosis. So when urinary chloride concentration is low in the urine, when urinary chloride concentration is low in renal tubular acidosis, urinary anion gap happens to be positive. Okay. Now let's see what is the state in this condition. In this condition, what is the formula for urinary anion gap? I said it is sodium plus potassium minus chloride. So here it is 20 plus 5.6 minus 22. So it's 25.6 minus 22, which is 3.6, which is positive. Only when it is negative, it is gut cause. Here it is positive. So what have I excluded? I already excluded lactic acidosis because it's normal anion gap. Now I have excluded diarrhea because urinary anion gap happens to be positive. So what am I left with? B and C. Now how will I differentiate distal renal tubular acidosis and proximal renal tubular acidosis? As I've already told you in the 4th video of the series, if it's distal renal tubular acidosis, it means DCT has failed to secrete H+ ions. So if DCT does not secrete H+ ions, urinary pH will be high. So if urinary pH does not fall below 5.3, if urinary pH does not fall below 5.3, that's diagnostic of distal renal tubular acidosis or classical renal tubular acidosis. And what is the pH that is provided here? It's 7. So it has not fallen below 5.3. So there is a defect in acidification of urine. Defect in acidification of urine would be distal renal tubular acidosis or classical renal tubular acidosis. So answer for this question would be choice B, which is distal RTA. Okay. So I'm going to summarize the steps to be followed in any arterial or venous blood gas analysis report. The first step is to identify the primary acid-base disorder, for which you look at pH, PCO2 and bicarbonate. If pH is normal, to identify primary acid-base disorder, you have to look at base excess ECF. If base excess ECF is not provided, you look at the difference between actual bicarbonate and standard bicarbonate. So all these steps for identifying just the primary acid-base disorder. Step number 2 is always to calculate compensation to find out hidden mixed acid-base disorders. Step number 3, you have to follow only when it is metabolic acidosis. Do not randomly calculate anion gap for all blood gas analysis reports. Only when it's metabolic acidosis, I am going to calculate anion gap. Now listen to this carefully. If anion gap is high, the diagnosis is very simple. Some abnormal acid is getting generated. It can be lactic acidosis, it can be ketoacidosis, it can be alcohol poisoning, or it can be a renal failure wherein metabolic acids have accumulated. If anion gap is normal, it can be because of two reasons. One is GI loss of bicarbonate or urinary loss of bicarbonate. To differentiate renal loss and gastrointestinal losses of bicarbonate, we have to calculate urinary anion gap, which means to differentiate these two conditions, just a blood gas analysis report is not sufficient. You have to get a urine sample, spot urine sample, and then you will have to calculate urinary anion gap. If urinary anion gap is negative, it is a GI loss of bicarbonate. If urinary anion gap is positive, it's renal loss of bicarbonate. So if you think it's renal loss of bicarbonate and then you're asked to find out whether it's proximal renal tubular acidosis or distal renal tubular acidosis, you should know that in classical or distal renal tubular acidosis, acidification defect is observed. Acidification of urine defect is observed. So urine pH cannot fall below 5.3. So if urinary pH is high, then you know it's distal renal tubular acidosis. So the case which I showed you, yeah, this is an actual case of a 9-month-old child presenting with classical or distal renal tubular acidosis with nephrocalcinosis. Yeah. So thank you.